Get off this lake now, or I'm calling the police!
Patricia Vandermeer was standing on my dock, the one my grandfather built in 1948. She had her phone out, finger hovering over the screen like she was about to launch a nuclear missile. I set down my coffee mug, kept my voice calm.
Patricia, this is my property. You need to leave.
This lakefront belongs to the HOA. You're trespassing!
Her voice had that edge to it, the kind of tone people use when they're absolutely convinced they're right, even when they're absolutely wrong. I've owned this land since before your development existed. Please leave my property. She actually did it, dialed 911. Right there, stood on my dock and told the dispatcher there was a squatter refusing to vacate HOA property. The sheriff's deputy who showed up 20 minutes later was Tom Brackman. I'd known Tom since he was 10 years old. He took one look at the situation, me holding my property deed, Patricia holding her HOA plat map, and you could see him trying not to laugh. "Ma'am," he said to Patricia, "this is his property. He owns it. Filing false police reports is a crime." The color drained from her face, but instead of apologizing, instead of backing down, she doubled down. "He can't own this. Someone would have told us." That's when I realized Patricia had no idea what she'd just started, because I didn't just own the cabin. I didn't just own the dock she was standing on. I owned the lake, the entire lake bed, the water rights, the shoreline, and that was just the beginning. What I discovered about this land, what I'd quietly been building for 30 years, would make Patricia wish she'd never knocked on my door. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me rewind to 3 months earlier, when this whole mess started. Because here's the thing about HOA presidents. Sometimes the craziest person in the neighborhood ends up in charge. And when they do, they can make your life hell. Or at least they can try. Drop a comment if you've ever dealt with a neighbor this insane. Because Patricia Vandermeer, she was just getting started. And she had no idea who she was messing with. My grandfather bought that land in 1947 for $800. He was a veteran, just back from the war, looking for a quiet place to build a life. 247 acres of raw timberland on the edge of a pristine lake. Nobody wanted it back then. Too remote, too rough. No electricity, no running water, just trees and rocks and that beautiful cold lake. He built the cabin himself, cut the logs, laid the foundation, put in the wood stove. Every summer when I was a kid, my dad would drive us out there. We'd fish for bass off the dock my grandfather built, swim until our fingers pruned, toast marshmallows over the fire pit while he told stories about the old days. When my dad passed, the cabin came to me. That was 2009. By then, I'd spent 35 years working as a civil engineer, specializing in land surveying and county infrastructure. I knew property law the way some people know baseball stats. And over those 3 decades, whenever a parcel near the cabin came up for sale, a foreclosure here, an estate sale there, a tax auction nobody else bid on, I quietly bought it. Not because I wanted to be some land baron, I just wanted to protect the area, keep it from getting carved up and ruined. I paid my taxes on time, kept the places maintained, never made a fuss about it. The cabin itself? 900 square feet, 1 bedroom. That same wood stove my grandfather installed. Simple, legal, permitted. Not fancy, but it was home. Then came 2018. A development company bought 200 acres of pine forest, about 400 yards from my cabin. They cleared the trees, put in roads, and started building what they called Lakeside Estates. 34 homes, priced between $900,000 and $1.5 million. Big houses, stone facades, 3-car garages, the works. They formed an HOA immediately, started installing gates, put up signs everywhere. Private lake access, residents only, no trespassing. In 2019, I got a friendly welcome packet in my mailbox. It had a little note from the HOA board inviting me to their first meeting. I called them back, polite as could be. "Thanks for thinking of me, but I'm not part of the HOA. My land predates your development." They seemed fine with that, for a while. Between 2020 and 2022, I'd get the occasional request. Could I maybe trim the trees along the property line? Would I consider painting my cabin to match their aesthetic standards? I ignored them. Not rudely, I just didn't respond. It wasn't their business. Then, Patricia Vandermeer got elected HOA president in 2023. She ran on a platform of protecting property values, and maintaining community standards. What that really meant? She wanted everything to look perfect for her morning yoga sessions on the deck. The first real problem came in May of last year. I drove out to the cabin for a weekend of fishing, walked down to my dock, and found a brand new sign bolted to the railing. Private, HOA members only. I unscrewed it, took it home, put it in my garage. The next weekend, they'd replaced it. So I installed security cameras, 4 of them, covering the dock and the path down from the cabin. Cost me $400, but I figured documentation might come in handy. Sure enough, 3 days later, my phone pinged with a motion alert. I pulled up the footage. There was Patricia herself, marching down to my dock in designer activewear and sunglasses that probably cost more than my monthly utilities. The camera caught the whole thing. She walked right up, pointed at the cabin, and said, and I quote, "This is our lakefront. You're squatting on HOA property." I walked out, kept my voice calm. "I've owned this land since before you moved to this state. Please leave." She put her hands on her hips. "We'll see about that." And that's when I knew. This wasn't going to be a simple misunderstanding. This was going to be a fight. June 15th. I was sitting at my kitchen table in town when I heard the mail truck. Went out to grab the mail and found a certified letter. Return address, Holloway & Associates, attorneys at law. Never a good sign. I signed for it, opened it right there in the driveway. The letter was 3 pages long, printed on thick ivory paper with embossed letterhead. Very official, very expensive looking, and completely absurd. According to Holloway & Associates, my cabin violated HOA covenants. Never mind that my cabin was built 71 years before the HOA existed. They claimed the structure was a non-conforming eyesore that negatively impacted property values. They demanded $15,000 in retroactive HOA dues, covering 2019 through 2024. I had 30 days to comply, or they'd pursue appropriate legal action. I stood there in my driveway, reading this thing twice, just to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. They wanted me to pay them $15,000 for the privilege of existing on my own property. Property I'd inherited. Property I'd been paying taxes on for 15 years. Here's something I learned that day. Sometimes the most dangerous thing in the world is a lawyer who doesn't know what they're doing. Because a good lawyer would have checked the property records first. Would have seen my deed dates back to 1947, would have advised their client to maybe not poke this particular bear. But Patricia had hired Holloway because he was aggressive, not because he was smart. I should have called my attorney right then, should have nipped this in the bud. But I kept thinking, hoping, really, that this would just blow over, that someone at the HOA would realize they were making a mistake. 1 week later, I drove out to the cabin for the weekend. It was a Saturday afternoon, warm. Perfect fishing weather. I just cracked open a beer and settled into my chair on the porch when I heard sirens. 2 sheriff's department SUVs came up the access road, lights flashing. They parked in front of my cabin. 2 deputies got out. One of them was Tom Brackman. I'd known Tom since he was 10 years old. His dad used to bring him fishing at this very lake, back before the HOA existed. Good kid. Grew up to be a good cop. He walked up to the porch looking uncomfortable. "Marcus," he said, "someone reported a trespasser in an abandoned structure." I set down my beer. "Tom, you know this is my cabin." "I know, but I got a call. Have to check it out." I went inside, grabbed my property deed, my tax bills, my utility bills, brought them out. Tom looked them over, nodded, and then walked back to his car to talk to Patricia, who'd apparently followed the deputies up the access road in her white Mercedes. She was standing next to her car, arms crossed again, that same smug expression. Tom walked over to her. Even from the porch I could hear him. "Ma'am, this is his property. He owns it. Filing false police reports is a crime." Patricia's voice went up half an octave. "I have documentation that he's trespassing on HOA land." She pulled out a map, a plat map of the HOA development. Tom glanced at it, handed it back. "This doesn't show his property, different parcels. You need to be very careful about calling 911 for civil disputes." He drove away. Patricia glared at me for a solid 10 seconds, then got in her car and left. I finished my beer, caught 3 bass, drove home Sunday afternoon. Monday morning, I called Eleanor Vasquez. She's been my family's attorney for 40 years, handled my grandfather's estate, helped me with every property purchase I'd made since the 90s. This has crossed from nuisance to harassment, she said. We need to respond formally. Can't I just keep ignoring them? Not anymore. They've involved law enforcement, made written demands, threatened litigation. If you don't respond, they'll claim you defaulted and try to get a judge's signature on something. We need to set the record straight. I sighed. Okay, what do we need? Everything, every deed, every survey, every receipt. Bring it all to my office. I hung up, went to my home office, opened my file cabinet, started pulling documents. And that's when it hit me. I'd been accidentally preparing for this fight for 30 years. Every land purchase, every survey I'd commissioned, every easement I'd researched for work, every tax payment, carefully filed. I had a paper trail that would make an accountant weep with joy. Turns out, being an engineer who's obsessed with documentation has its advantages. Eleanor's office smelled like old books and coffee. I hauled in 2 cardboard boxes full of documents, deeds, surveys, tax records, easement agreements. She helped me spread them across her conference table. Walk me through this, she said, pulling out a yellow legal pad. I started with the original, grandfather's deed from 1947, 247 acres. Then my inheritance paperwork from 2009. Then the purchases, 14 properties I'd bought between 2003 and 2019. Eleanor grabbed a highlighter, started marking up a county map, each parcel in yellow. When she finished, she sat back and stared at it. Marcus, do you realize what you own here? I shrugged. Some land. I wanted to keep it from getting developed. She turned the map toward me. You own a complete circle around the HOA development. Every parcel on their borders is yours. Plus, she flipped through another document. Wait, what's this? Oh, that's from 2004. The old utility co-op went bankrupt. Nobody wanted to buy it. I figured it was a good investment. Eleanor's eyes went wide. You own the water system? And the septic drainage field? And the electrical transformer? Yeah. She started laughing. Not a polite chuckle, a full-on, tears-in-her-eyes laugh. Marcus, you could shut off their water tomorrow. That's 34 families. I'm not that guy. I know you're not, but, she grinned, we'll save this for leverage. I didn't like the sound of that. I'm not trying to hurt anyone, Eleanor. I just want them to leave me alone. I understand, but you need to understand something too. Patricia has already involved the police, already threatened litigation. She's not going to stop because you ask nicely. So we need to make sure she knows what she's dealing with, not as a threat, just as a fact. She made some notes, then her phone rang. She glanced at the screen. Ray Kowalski. I asked him to look into some historical records. She answered on speaker. Eleanor? I found something interesting. Ray's voice crackled through. He'd worked at the county recorder's office for 45 years, knew every document filed since 1970. Go ahead, Ray. 1952 County Ordinance. The old logging road that ran through what's now the Lakeside Estates development. The county granted a perpetual public access easement for it. That road's been paved now. It's their main entrance. Eleanor sat up straight. Are you telling me the HOA can't legally gate that road? Correct. It's public access to the lake. Has been for 70 years. They've had that gate up for what, 4 years now? Illegally for 4 years, Eleanor said. Ray, can you send me a copy of that ordinance? Already on its way. We hung up. Eleanor looked at me. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to respond to their letter. Polite, but firm. Set the record straight. And we're going to mention, casually, that you own 14 parcels totaling 287 acres in the area. We won't specify which ones. Let them wonder. And the easement? We'll hold that card close. I want to see how Patricia reacts first. If she escalates, we escalate. But I have a feeling she's going to spend some money doing a title search. And when she does, she's going to realize she picked a fight with the wrong person. I left Eleanor's office with a weird mix of emotions. Relief that I had a plan, anxiety about where this was headed, and a nagging feeling that Patricia wasn't going to back down, no matter what the records showed. Because I've learned something in 58 years on this planet. People don't like being wrong, and they really don't like being publicly wrong. Patricia had made this fight personal. She'd gone on record, filed complaints, involved the police. Backing down now would mean admitting she'd made a mistake. And people like Patricia, they don't do that. I was right. Things were about to get worse before they got better. July 10th. Eleanor sent the response letter. 3 pages. Professional, factual, and devastating. She laid it out point by point. Marcus Thornhill's property, legally acquired in 1947, predates the Lakeside Estates development by 71 years. The cabin is legally permitted, grandfathered under all applicable zoning regulations. Mr. Thornhill is not a member of the HOA, never agreed to any covenants, and therefore owes 0 dues. Any further false claims or harassment would be met with a civil lawsuit for defamation and interference with property rights. Then came the kicker, the final paragraph. Please note for your client's records that Mr. Thornhill owns 14 parcels, totaling 287 acres, adjacent to and surrounding Lakeside Estates HOA. Eleanor didn't specify which parcels, didn't need to. The message was clear: do your homework before you pick a fight. She attached copies of my property survey, tax records, and chain of title. Every document certified, every piece of paper legally bulletproof. 2 days later, the HOA held an emergency board meeting. I wasn't invited, obviously, but I heard about it later from Frank Moretti, one of the board members who was actually reasonable. According to Frank, Patricia read Eleanor's letter out loud to the board. When she got to the part about 287 acres, someone asked, "Did we verify that?" Patricia waved her hand dismissively. "He's bluffing. He's trying to intimidate us." Frank spoke up. "Patricia, maybe we should check the county records before we spend more money on this. He doesn't own 287 acres. That's impossible. Someone would have told us during the development." "Actually," another board member said quietly, "I remember hearing that the original landowner around the lake had kept a bunch of parcels, but I thought that was just a rumor." Patricia cut them off. "We're going to fight this. I want a full title search on his supposed properties. He's lying. He has to be." The board authorized $25,000 for legal research and action against non-conforming structures. Frank told me he was the only one who voted no. Meanwhile, I took Eleanor's advice and filed a simple notice with the county recorder's office. Nothing fancy, just a 1-page document. Declaration of easement rights. Public notice. It stated that I, Marcus Thornhill, owner of 14 specified parcels, was exercising my legal right to maintain utility infrastructure and access ways across my properties in accordance with state law. Didn't threaten anything, didn't demand anything, just put it on public record that I was aware of my rights. Ray called me after he filed it. That'll get her attention. She's going to have to spend that 25 grand doing title research now. Good, I said. Let her spend money learning what she should have researched before she started this mess. I wasn't trying to be vindictive. But there's a principle in engineering. If someone won't listen to reason, sometimes you have to let them learn the hard way. Give them enough rope, as they say. Patricia had the rope. She was already tying knots. It took 2 more weeks. Then Frank called me, sounding exhausted. "Marcus, the title search came back." "And? Everything you said is true. Every parcel, the utility infrastructure, all of it. The attorney told Patricia we need to negotiate with you. Settle this quietly." "What did she say?" Frank sighed. "She said you're holding our water hostage, called it terrorism. The attorney tried to explain that you haven't threatened anything, but she wouldn't listen. She fired him." "She fired her own attorney?" "Yep, hired a new one, Richard Castillo. You know him?" I did. Castillo had a reputation for aggressive HOA litigation. He'd made a name for himself going after homeowners who didn't follow rules, even when the rules were questionable. Exactly the kind of lawyer you hire when you want war, not resolution. "Frank, I'm sorry you're caught in the middle of this. It's not your fault. Patricia's on a crusade. Half the board wants to drop this. She won't let us. Just be careful, okay? She's not thinking straight." I thanked him and hung up. Looked out my window at the trees. Eleanor was right. Patricia wasn't going to back down. She'd made this personal, invested money and pride into it. The more evidence that proved she was wrong, the harder she'd fight, which meant things were about to escalate. Again. Late July bled into August. That's when Patricia launched what I can only describe as a harassment campaign. First came the HOA newsletter. It went to all 34 homes in Lakeside Estates. 2 full pages about community threats. According to the newsletter, a non-member was demanding payments and threatening to shut off the water supply to the entire neighborhood. Complete fiction. I hadn't demanded anything, hadn't threatened anything, but Patricia presented it as fact. My phone started ringing. Angry residents. How dare you hold our water hostage? One guy called me a terrorist. A woman told me she had kids and demanded to know how I could sleep at night. I tried explaining, showed them the facts. Some listened. Most didn't want to hear it. Then came the vandalism. First, someone egged my cabin, got the windows, the door, the wood siding. Took me 2 hours to clean off. A week later, I found a dead fish on my porch. Not a fresh one either. It had been sitting in the sun. The smell was incredible, and not in a good way. August 2nd, Patricia filed another 911 call, claimed I'd been threatening residents. Completely false. Tom Brackman showed up again. He was getting tired of this. Marcus, I know this is harassment. I'm documenting everything, but I have to respond to the calls. I understand. Do what you need to do. He took my statement, checked the cabin, found nothing because there was nothing to find. Told Patricia, again, to stop filing false reports. 6 days later, she called 911 a third time. This time, she claimed my dock was a hazardous structure endangering children. The county had to send a building inspector. He walked the dock, checked the supports, tested the railings, wrote up a report. Dock is safe, properly constructed, inspected, and permitted. No violations. Then he added a note. This appears to be a civil property dispute being misrepresented as a safety issue. 3 false 911 calls in 6 weeks. Tom told me quietly that if she did it again, he was going to recommend criminal charges. But here's where things got interesting. Not all the HOA residents were buying Patricia's story. Frank and 6 other homeowners approached me at the coffee shop in town. Frank looked embarrassed. Marcus, we need to apologize. We had no idea Patricia was lying about all this. Most of us didn't even know your land was separate from the development. One of the others, a woman named Sandra, added, "We thought the HOA owned the entire lakefront. That's what the developer told us when we bought." I pulled out my phone, showed them the 1947 deed, the tax records, the works. Sandra went pale. "Oh my God, she's been lying to us." Frank nodded. "We did some digging after the title search. Found the developer's original marketing materials from 2018. They had a map showing your cabin labeled as Future HOA Amenity, Lakeside Clubhouse. That hit me like a punch. They were planning to force me out from the beginning? Looks like it. Developer left the area after selling all the lots. Patricia's just continuing their plan. Sandra shook her head. "Half the board wants to drop this. Patricia won't let us. She says you're trying to destroy our property values. I'm not trying to destroy anything. I just want to be left alone." Frank sighed. "We know, but Patricia, she won't apologize. She'd rather burn the whole thing down than admit she was wrong. Is there any way to settle this quietly? What do you want?" I thought about it. Acknowledgement of my property rights. A written apology. Patricia stops filing false police reports. That's it. I don't want money. I don't want revenge. I just want this to end. She'll never apologize. Then we have a problem. They left. I sat there with my coffee, thinking about how this simple property dispute had turned into something so toxic. Patricia had lied to her own neighbors, weaponized them against me. And now that some of them knew the truth, she was doubling down instead of backing off. There's a concept in engineering called failure cascade. One small problem creates another problem, which creates another until the whole system collapses. Patricia was in a failure cascade. The more she fought, the worse it got. But she couldn't see it. Or maybe she could. Maybe she just couldn't stop. September 3rd, 7:42 in the morning. My phone rang. Unknown number. "Mr. Thornhill, this is Dave from Apex Excavation. We've got a problem out at your property." I sat up. "What kind of problem?" "We're here doing emergency water line repair, but the homeowner's saying this isn't the right location. Can you come out?" I was there in 20 minutes. Found a big yellow excavator sitting on my property. The water line that served the HOA, my water line, running through my land under easement, had been cut open. Water was gushing out, turning the ground into mud. The contractor, a guy in his 50s wearing a hard hat and a stressed expression, showed me his work order. HOA hired us for emergency repair on the community water line. Authorization signed by Patricia Vandermeer. Says here the infrastructure's on HOA property, and it's failing. I stared at the document. Patricia's signature was right there in blue ink, bold as daylight. This is my private utility, on my property. It serves the HOA through an easement, but I own it. Who authorized you to excavate here? He pointed at the signature. The HOA president. She said it was an emergency, failing infrastructure. Did she show you a property survey, an easement map? No, just said it was community property, and we needed to fix it immediately. I pulled out my phone, showed him my property deed and utility ownership documents. His face went from stressed to horrified. Oh, hell. She told me this was HOA land. It's not. You're trespassing, and you've damaged my infrastructure. He backed away from the excavator. Sir, I'm sorry. We were given bad information. I'm shutting this down right now. Good idea. You might want to get a lawyer, because she's going to try to stick you with the bill for this. He left. The water line was severed. 34 homes in Lakeside Estates suddenly had no water service. And the repair? Estimated cost, $47,000. I called Eleanor. She just tried to sabotage her own neighborhood's water supply to blame me. Document everything, every photo, every conversation, every receipt. I'll start the paperwork for a restraining order. While I was arranging emergency repair contractors, Patricia was already spinning the narrative. She sent a mass email to every resident. Water crisis. Property owner refuses repairs. Holds community hostage. The email claimed I damaged my own infrastructure to extort the HOA, that I was refusing to allow repairs unless they paid me, that families were suffering because of my greed. Social media lit up. People started posting angry messages. Lakeside Estates is being held hostage by a property owner. Some tagged local news stations. That's when Jasmine Chen showed up at my door. She was a reporter for Lake County Watchdog, a regional news website. 34 years old, sharp eyes, recorder in hand. Mr. Thornhill, I'm hearing two different versions of this water situation. Mind if I get yours? I told her everything. Showed her the contractor's work order with Patricia's signature. Showed her my property records, proving I owned the utility. Showed her my credit card statement. I'd already paid a $47,000 deposit for the emergency repair, out of my own pocket. Jasmine's expression shifted from skeptical to furious as I laid it out. She authorized construction on someone else's property, and then blamed you for the damage? That's what it looks like. Can I see that security footage you mentioned? I pulled it up. The excavator rolling onto my land. The contractor following Patricia's instructions. The whole thing time-stamped and dated. Jasmine made a decision. I'm running this story, but I'm going to dig deeper first. Something about this doesn't add up. Why would she be so desperate to force you out? 2 weeks later, she had her answer, and it changed everything. Jasmine had filed Freedom of Information Act requests with the county, pulled property records, business filings, campaign contribution reports. What she found was stunning. Patricia's husband, Derek Vandermeer, was a vice president at Summit Valley Bank. That bank had financed 31 of the 34 mortgages in Lakeside Estates. And Derek's compensation structure? 10% of his annual bonus was tied to regional property value growth. In 2023, Derek's total bonus had been $340,000. $34,000 of that came directly from property value assessments in areas where his bank held mortgages. My cabin, according to the comparative market analysis Jasmine obtained, was lowering the assessed values of nearby homes by an average of $50,000 per property. If I could be forced to sell and the land redeveloped, those values would jump. The bank would refinance at higher amounts. Derek's bonuses would increase. Jasmine found the smoking gun in Patricia's own emails, obtained through a board member who'd turned on her. One message to Derek, dated June 2024. If we can force him out, comps in the neighborhood jump $150,000. Your next bonus is riding on this. The article went live September 18th. Title: HOA President Allegedly Damages Infrastructure and Property Rights Battle. Husband's Bank Stands to Profit. It went viral. Reddit picked it up. Facebook groups shared it. Local TV news stations called for interviews. Within 48 hours, the story had 50,000 shares. The comment section was brutal. "This is why I'll never buy in an HOA. The corruption is insane. Someone needs to investigate this bank." Patricia tried to do damage control, posted on Facebook. "These are lies being spread by someone who wants to hurt our community." It backfired. People dug up her own emails, found her contradictions. The more she defended herself, the worse it looked. And me? I just kept fixing the water line and paying my bills. Sometimes the best move is to stay quiet and let the truth do the talking. The article hit a nerve. I started getting messages from people across the country. "Same thing happened to my parents. Our HOA tried this too. Thank you for fighting back." Someone started an online fundraiser without asking me. "Help Marcus fight HOA abuse." It raised $23,000 in 4 days. I donated every penny to the County Legal Aid Society. Didn't feel right keeping money from people I'd never met. Social media gave Patricia a new nickname, Lakeside Karen. The hashtag trended locally for 3 days. Videos about HOA overreach used my story as an example. A TikTok lawyer broke down the legal issues and got 2 million views. Local TV stations showed up at the cabin. I declined interviews. Eleanor gave a statement on my behalf. "Mr. Thornhill simply wants to enjoy his family's property in peace. He has broken no laws and harmed no one." The pressure worked. On September 16th, the county commissioner's office received over 200 constituent complaints. Phone calls, emails, letters, all asking the same question. Why isn't anyone investigating this? The county attorney opened a formal investigation. 3 issues on the table. First, the illegal gate blocking what turned out to be a public access road. Second, Patricia's 3 false 911 reports, misuse of emergency services. Third, potential utility interference. The state attorney general's office got involved too, looking into whether Derek's bank had violated conflict of interest regulations. Turns out, when your spouse is using HOA authority to manipulate property values for your financial benefit, that raises some regulatory eyebrows. The building department also started reviewing whether the HOA had misrepresented its authority over non-member properties. That's a violation of state HOA regulations. Could lead to fines. Patricia's response? A defiant Facebook post. "I will not be bullied by mob tactics. We are protecting our community from someone who wants to destroy our property values. I will not back down." The post got ratioed so hard, she deleted it within an hour. But screenshots live forever. September 20th, Eleanor filed the formal lawsuit. County Superior Court. Plaintiff, Marcus Thornhill. Defendant, Lakeside Estates HOA and Patricia Vandermeer, individually. Claims included harassment, defamation, trespassing, and interference with property rights. We asked for an injunction, legal fees, and $1 in nominal damages. I looked at Eleanor when she showed me the draft. $1? She smiled. "Because this isn't about money. It's about establishing your rights permanently. A judgment in your favor, even for $1, creates legal precedent. It puts on record, forever, that you were right and they were wrong. And it makes it clear we're fighting on principle, not for profit." Made sense. Sometimes the smallest number carries the biggest message. The lawsuit filing generated another wave of media coverage. This time, national outlets picked it up. HOA battles escalate nationwide. Lake County case highlights systemic issues. The article mentioned pending legislation in 8 states to restrict HOA authority. 12 Lakeside Estates homeowners signed a petition calling for Patricia's removal as president. Even some of her original supporters were backing away. When your HOA president's husband is under investigation and you're paying for her legal crusade, enthusiasm drops fast. But Patricia dug in. She hired a crisis PR consultant, started doing damage control interviews. This is a coordinated attack by someone who wants to damage our community. Except now, people knew the facts. The reporter would ask, "But isn't it true that you authorized excavation on his property?" Patricia would deflect. "That's a legal question I can't comment on." "Did your husband's bank finance most of the mortgages in your development?" "My husband's employment has nothing to do with this. But his bonus is tied to property values in areas where..." This interview is over. Not a good look. Tom Brackman called me in late September. "Just wanted you to know, I submitted my reports on those 9/11 calls to the prosecutor. If she files one more false report, I'm recommending charges. Misuse of emergency services is a misdemeanor, but it goes on your record. Thanks, Tom. I appreciate you having my back. You're not the bad guy here, Marcus. Never were. I'm just sorry it took this long for everyone else to figure that out. The wheels of justice turned slowly, but they were turning. Patricia had two choices now: settle quietly and admit she'd been wrong, or fight in court and risk having everything exposed in public record. Guess which one she chose? Hint: narcissists don't do quiet. October 2024, discovery phase of the lawsuit. That's when both sides have to produce documents. Emails, text messages, board meeting minutes, financial records, everything relevant to the case. The HOA's attorneys sent us a box of materials. Eleanor and I spent a weekend going through it. Coffee, highlighters, legal pads, the works. That's when we hit gold. Email dated June 20th, 2024. Patricia to Derek. If we can force him out, comps in the neighborhood jump $150,000. Your next bonus is riding on this. Time to get aggressive. Another email, Patricia to Richard Castillo, her new attorney, dated July 7th. I don't care if his deed is older. Find a way to make him leave. We'll pay whatever it takes. Board meeting minutes from July 12th. Patricia presenting the title search results to the board. Except she didn't. According to the actual minutes, she told the board that the title search was inconclusive and they needed to do more research. Frank had kept copies. He sent them to Eleanor. The real title search, the one that confirmed every single thing I'd claimed, had been completed July 22nd. Patricia had seen it, read it, and then lied to her own board about what it said. 5 board members had no idea I actually owned everything I claimed. Patricia had told them I was bluffing, that the 287 acres was an exaggeration, that the utility ownership was a legal technicality. She'd spent $78,000 of HOA money fighting me while hiding the evidence that proved I was right. Eleanor sat back in her chair. This is bad. For her, I mean. This is very, very bad. What do we do with it? We use it carefully. Patricia's already in a corner. If we push too hard, she'll just get crazier. But if we educate the HOA board about what she's done, they'll remove her themselves. October 15th. Eleanor sent a new letter to the HOA, not to Patricia, not to her attorney, directly to the board members. Subject line: Notice of intent to exercise property rights. The letter was calm, professional, almost friendly, but it laid out the facts with surgical precision. Marcus Thornhill owns the utility infrastructure serving Lakeside Estates. He owns 14 parcels surrounding the development, including all access easements. He owns portions of the lakebed under state riparian rights doctrine. The current utility easement agreements are revocable with 90-day notice per state law. The public access easement recorded in 1952 makes the HOA's gate illegal and always has been. Then came the key paragraph. Mr. Thornhill has no desire to disrupt utility services to HOA residents, despite having the legal right to do so with proper notice under state regulation. However, he will protect his property rights through all available legal means if harassment continues. This letter serves as formal notice of these rights and is provided in the interest of encouraging a reasonable resolution. Eleanor attached copies of everything, all 14 property deeds, the utility ownership documents, the 1952 county easement, the title search results Patricia had hidden from her board. She sent it certified mail. Every board member got a copy. October 17th, emergency HOA board meeting. This time, Eleanor attended as my legal observer. She sat in the back, didn't say a word, just took notes. Frank called the meeting to order. First item, review of new information provided by Mr. Thornhill's attorney. The board spent 30 minutes going through the documents. You could see the realization dawning. He really does own all this. She lied to us about the title search. We've spent $78,000 fighting someone who was right all along. Frank finally spoke. I move that we remove Patricia Vandermeer as president of the HOA, effective immediately, for failure to disclose material information to the board and for exceeding her authority in pursuing this dispute. Second, said Sandra. All in favor? 6 hands went up. Patricia's hand stayed down. She was the only one. You're all cowards. He's bluffing. He can't shut off our water. This is extortion. Frank's voice was tired. Patricia, we've seen the documents. We've talked to attorneys. He can revoke the easement with 90 days' notice. He's been paying for maintenance on infrastructure we thought we owned. You knew this in July. You lied to us. You'll regret this. I'll sue the board. You're removed from office, Patricia. This meeting is adjourned. She stormed out, literally, slammed the door hard enough that a picture frame fell off the wall in the hallway. Sandra approached Eleanor after the meeting. Can we settle this? Please. Eleanor looked at her. My client wants 4 things. Written acknowledgement of his property rights, a public apology from the HOA, reimbursement of his legal fees to date, $18,000, and Patricia Vandermeer banned from contacting him in any form. Done. We'll draft a settlement agreement tomorrow. Eleanor shook her hand. Thank you. This could have been resolved 6 months ago if someone had just checked the public records. I know. We're sorry. Most of us had no idea what was happening. I believe that. Most people aren't trying to cause problems. They're just following the person in charge. And when the person in charge is lying to them, they don't know any better until it's too late. Patricia didn't take her removal well. She hired a personal attorney and threatened to sue the board for wrongful termination. Her attorney took one look at the situation and quietly withdrew from representation. Most people would have stopped there. Case settled. Move on with your life. Cut your losses. But Patricia, she couldn't let it go. And that's when she made the mistake that turned this from a property dispute into a criminal matter. October 25th, I got served with papers at my house. Patricia Vandermeer, acting as an individual, had filed a personal lawsuit against me. Claims included defamation, conspiracy with a journalist, and tortious interference with her position as HOA president. She was seeking $500,000 in damages. She also filed for a restraining order, claiming I'd threatened her, provided zero evidence, just her sworn statement saying she feared for her safety. Eleanor read the filing and laughed. Not a happy laugh. The kind of laugh you make when something is so absurd you can't quite believe it's real. She's unraveling. This is a nuisance suit. We'll get it dismissed. November 1st. Court hearing on the restraining order. Small courtroom. Judge Patricia Chen presiding. No relation to Jasmine, fortunately. Patricia showed up with a new attorney. I showed up with Eleanor. The gallery was packed. Reporters. Curious locals. Some Lakeside Estates residents who wanted to see how this ended. Judge Chen reviewed the request. Ms. Vandermeer, you're asking for a restraining order against Mr. Thornhill. What specific threats or actions has he taken that justify this? Patricia's attorney stood. Your Honor, my client has been subjected to a coordinated harassment campaign orchestrated by Mr. Thornhill. He's worked with media to defame her, caused her to lose her position in the community, and has made implied threats regarding the utility service to her neighborhood. Implied threats? What does that mean? He owns the water system and has suggested he could shut it off. Judge Chen looked at me. Mr. Thornhill, have you threatened to shut off water service? I stood. No, Your Honor. I stated that I own the infrastructure and have legal rights regarding it. I've never threatened to exercise those rights. I've paid for $47,000 in repairs to maintain service to the HOA residents. The judge flipped through documents. Ms. Vandermeer, I'm looking at the evidence you've provided. You've submitted your own testimony. No recordings, no witnesses, no documentation of actual threats. Meanwhile, Mr. Thornhill has provided security camera footage, phone records, and email logs showing that you've contacted him repeatedly, not the other way around. Patricia's attorney tried to redirect. Your Honor, the media coverage alone has been devastating to my clients. Media coverage based on public records and court filings? That's not harassment. That's journalism. Judge Chen closed the folder. Request for restraining order denied. Ms. Vandermeer, I'm looking at the case file here. You filed 3 911 calls regarding this man, all of which were found to be without merit. You authorized construction on his property without permission. Filing false police reports is a crime. I strongly suggest you reconsider this litigation. Patricia stood up. Her voice was shaking. He owns the water system. That's extortion. He's holding an entire neighborhood hostage. Ma'am, owning infrastructure is not extortion. Using false police reports to harass someone might be. Sit down. She sat. Judge Chen looked at Eleanor. "Does your client wish to pursue charges?" Eleanor glanced at me. I shook my head slightly. She turned back. "Not at this time, Your Honor. We simply want this harassment to stop." Noted. Request denied. Case dismissed. We left the courtroom. Patricia was yelling something about appeals. Her attorney looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. 1 week later, things escalated again. November 10th. The county attorney filed criminal charges. 3 counts of filing a false report, misuse of 911. 1 count of filing a false statement with a government agency regarding the building inspection. Same day, the county issued a formal citation to Lakeside Estates HOA for the illegal gate across the public access road. They had 30 days to remove it or face daily fines of $500. The new HOA board, led by Sandra now, held an emergency meeting, voted unanimously to remove the gate immediately. They hired a contractor. 2 days later, the gate came down, chains cut, posts removed, the old private property signs thrown in a dumpster. Ray from the county recorder's office personally installed a new sign, "Public Lake Access, All Welcome." I drove out there the day it happened, wanted to see it myself. There were families there, people I'd never seen before. An older couple in their 70s were setting up fishing poles. The man saw me watching and walked over. "You're Thornhill, aren't you?" "Yeah." He stuck out his hand. "Thank you. My dad and I used to fish this lake back in the 60s. Been blocked for 6 years. Didn't know we had legal access until I saw the news. This means a lot." His voice cracked a little. I shook his hand and nodded. Didn't trust myself to say much. That's the thing about property rights. They're not abstract. They're about real people having access to real places that matter to them. November 20th. Final hearing on my lawsuit. The HOA had already settled, agreed to everything we asked for. Patricia was the only remaining defendant. She'd fired 2 more attorneys, decided to represent herself. Big mistake. The courtroom was packed. Eleanor presented evidence systematically. Property ownership, original deed, chain of title, tax records. Judge reviewed them, nodded. Clear ownership established. Harassment timeline, the 3 911 calls, played on the courtroom audio system. 911, what's your emergency? There's a squatter refusing to leave. 47 threatening emails, read into the record. Text messages where Patricia encouraged other residents to harass me. Judge Chen looked annoyed. Actually annoyed. Financial motive. The bank records showing Derek's bonus structure. Patricia's email. Your next bonus is riding on this. So this was about increasing your husband's compensation. Patricia stood. That's taken out of context, Eleanor responded calmly. The full email is in evidence, Your Honor. The context makes it worse, not better. Infrastructure sabotage. The work order Patricia had signed, authorizing excavation on my property. Security footage of the excavator. Contractor's affidavit. Mrs. Vandermeer told me it was HOA property and insisted we begin work immediately. Judge Chen leaned forward. You authorized construction on someone else's land? I thought it was our easement. After being informed multiple times that it wasn't, Patricia didn't answer. Eleanor's closing statement was 3 minutes long, short, devastating. Your Honor, my client owns 287 acres, including the infrastructure serving 34 families. He could have shut off their water, blocked their road access, made their lives miserable. He did none of that. He paid $47,000 out of pocket to repair damage caused by the defendant's illegal excavation. He just wanted to be left alone on his family's land. Mrs. Vandermeer couldn't accept that someone wouldn't bow to her authority. This case is simple. She harassed him. She lied to authorities. She damaged his property. And she did it all for financial gain. Judge Chen didn't even pause to deliberate. I find in favor of the plaintiff on all claims. Mrs. Vandermeer, you are ordered to pay $1 in nominal damages, $24,500 in legal fees, and $47,000 for the infrastructure repair. I'm issuing a permanent injunction. You may not contact Mr. Thornhill, enter his property, or file any complaints regarding his property with any government agency. I'm also referring this case to the prosecutor for additional charges. You're fortunate Mr. Thornhill is a more restrained person than you demonstrated yourself to be. He could have exercised property rights that would have devastated your neighborhood. Instead, he chose the legal system. I suggest you learn from his example. Gavel. Done. Outside the courthouse, reporters clustered around us. Cameras, microphones, questions shouted over each other. Eleanor gave a brief statement. I stood there awkwardly, hands in my pockets, wishing I was back at my cabin. A reporter called out, "Mr. Thornhill, do you feel vindicated?" I looked at the camera. I feel tired. This never should have happened. I'm just glad it's over. Will you pursue additional charges? No. I just want to go fishing. In the background, you could see Patricia arguing with someone. Deputy Brackman was there, serving her with a summons for the criminal trial. Derek was visible too, standing by his car about 50 feet away, looking at his phone, not looking at his wife. 2 weeks later, I heard through Frank that Derek had filed for divorce. The court had spoken. The public had spoken. Justice had been served. But here's the thing about winning. It's hollow if nothing good comes from it. I didn't just want to beat Patricia. I wanted to fix what she'd broken. And that's when the real work began. December 2024. I met with Sandra and 3 other HOA board members at a coffee shop. Eleanor came too, just to keep things official. We want to make this right, Sandra said. Not just the settlement. We want to do something meaningful. I'd been thinking about this for weeks. Had an idea. You know the land right along the county road? About 3 acres of my property, right at the public access point. They nodded. I want to donate it to the county for a public park. Boat launch, parking area, picnic pavilion, accessible fishing dock. Make it a real community resource. Sandra's eyes lit up. That's generous. My grandfather believed lakes belonged to everyone. I'd like to honor that. The county recreation department loved the idea. They had grant money available, $80,000 they'd been sitting on, looking for the right project. The HOA board voted to contribute $30,000 in labor and materials, called it community restitution. We broke ground in January, had the grand opening in April of 2025. They named it Thornhill Community Lake Access, put up a wooden sign with a dedication plaque. The plaque had a photo of my grandfather, standing in front of the original cabin, circa 1953, holding a string of bass. The inscription read, "In honor of Thomas Thornhill, 1919 to 1998, who believed lakes belonged to everyone." 200 people showed up for the opening. Families, kids, local officials making speeches about community and healing. The elderly man I'd met at the gate removal was there with his grandkids, teaching them to bait hooks. I stood off to the side, trying not to get emotional. Eleanor squeezed my shoulder. Your grandfather would be proud. The HOA made changes too, real ones. They adopted new bylaws requiring conflict of interest disclosures for all board members, created an appeals process for architectural decisions, established a Good Neighbor Fund with $10,000 annually for community projects. Most importantly, they passed a resolution. Lakeside Estates HOA recognizes and respects all pre-existing property rights and easements. No board member may take action affecting non-member properties without full board approval and verification of legal authority. 8 families from the HOA personally apologized to me, brought cookies, invited me to a neighborhood barbecue. I went. It was awkward for about 10 minutes, then fine. Turned out most of them were decent people who'd been fed bad information. Property values? They actually increased. Turns out having public lake access nearby is an amenity, not a liability. The comparative market analysis from June 2025 showed homes in Lakeside Estates had appreciated an average of $60,000 since the gate came down. Patricia's whole premise had been wrong. She'd fought to protect property values and ended up damaging them. Once the fight ended and the community healed, values went up. But I wanted to do one more thing, something lasting. I established the Crystal Lake Land Stewardship Scholarship, $50,000 in initial funding, split between the settlement money and my own contribution. It provides a $5,000 annual scholarship for a local high school student studying civil engineering, land surveying, environmental law, or property rights. The first recipient was a 17-year-old named Maya Hernandez. Brilliant kid. Wanted to be a surveyor so people don't lose their land because they don't understand the system. I spoke at the presentation ceremony, held at the high school auditorium. My grandfather bought land for $800 and built a life. Property rights aren't just legal concepts, they're the foundation of freedom, but they require knowledge. This scholarship is about making sure the next generation understands how to protect what's theirs. Jasmine Chen wrote a follow-up article, From HOA Battle to Community Benefit: How One Man Turned Conflict into Legacy. It included a toolkit, 10 things to check before buying HOA property. Got shared over 100,000 times. The article suggested readers look up deed restrictions before buying, research HOA litigation history, verify who owns utilities and common areas, and check for public easements. Simple stuff. The kind of research Patricia should have done before declaring war. Life returned to normal. Better than normal, actually. I spent weekends at the cabin, fishing, reading, living simply. Tom Brackman stopped by sometimes on his days off. We'd fish and not talk much. Perfect friendship. Ray from the recorder's office brought donuts a few times. We'd spread out old property maps on my porch, trace the history of land ownership in the county. He loved that stuff. And me? I reflected a lot on what had happened. I could have crushed them, could have shut off the water, could have blocked the road, could have made 34 families miserable to prove a point. But I didn't. And I'm glad I didn't. Because winning the right way, with facts, with law, with patience, meant I could sleep at night. Meant I could look at my grandfather's photo and know I'd honored his memory. Sometimes revenge isn't about destruction. It's about building something better than what someone tried to destroy. You're probably wondering what happened to Patricia. Criminal charges. She pled guilty to 1 count of misuse of 911, reduced from 3. Sentence: $2,500 in fine, 100 hours of community service, 1 year probation. Derek divorced her. Summit Valley Bank transferred him to a different region to avoid the appearance of impropriety. Patricia sold her house in Lakeside Estates, moved out of state. Last I heard, she was working in retail management somewhere in Nevada. I don't take pleasure in her downfall. I really don't. I just wanted her to stop. But some people don't know when to quit, and the consequences catch up eventually. Here's what I learned from all this, and what you should know if you're ever in a similar situation. First, get a survey. Always. Know your exact property boundaries. Cost me $800 15 years ago, and saved me hundreds of thousands in this fight. Second, research HOAs before you buy. Read the covenants, every page. Talk to residents. Check the county court records for litigation history. An HOA that sues frequently is a red flag the size of Texas. Third, document everything. Every email, every conversation, every photo, every receipt. I had security cameras, dated files, and backups of backups. That documentation won this case. Fourth, know your rights. Property law favors documented ownership. If you have deeds, surveys, and tax records, you're in a strong position. Don't let someone intimidate you into giving up what's legally yours. Fifth, lawyer up early. Not when you're buried in harassment, not when you're facing lawsuits. The moment someone makes it official, certified letters, police involvement, threats of legal action, call an attorney. Eleanor saved me months of headaches by responding correctly from the start. I still go out to the cabin every weekend, still fish off the same dock, still sit in my grandfather's chair on the porch and watch the sunset. But now, when I look across the lake, I see families at the public access park, kids learning to fish, couples launching kayaks, people enjoying a resource that almost got stolen by someone who thought she owned it just because she lived nearby. That's the real victory, not the court judgment, not the money. The fact that something good came from something ugly. So if this story resonated with you, do me a favor, share it. Someone in your life might be dealing with an HOA nightmare right now. They need to know they're not alone. They need to know that standing up to bullies, even when those bullies have authority and money, is possible. Drop a comment about your HOA experience, good or bad. I'd love to hear your stories. And if you're thinking about buying a house in an HOA, do your research first. Know what you're getting into. Property rights are only as strong as your willingness to defend them, legally, properly, and patiently. Thanks for listening to my story. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have some fishing to do.